Okay, so this is lab 12 on distributed deployment. In this lab, we're going to pack an existing domain, and we're going to create a managed server template and then copy that managed server template to our, and I'm using air quotes, our remote server. And we'll create a managed server on a remote server, and then we'll be able to start that using Node Manager. Now, I've tried to keep this lab simple enough so that everyone at home can execute this lab. You know, as you can imagine, most of you out there may not have a second machine that can host WebLogic and create a managed server on. If you had enough processing power on your machine, you could actually stand up 2 VMs on your machine, say using VirtualBox. But that would require creating, you can create a VM with Linux and then clone it to create another VM with Linux and define separate networking configurations for either one of those so that they look like 2 different servers. And then you can simulate a remote deployment. You would essentially have a 2-node WebLogic deployment. This lab assumes that you don't have that. We're not going to talk about how we can set up VMs using VirtualBox, although that might be a great idea for another lab. But for this lab, what we're going to do is we're going to trick WebLogic into thinking that there's 2 machines. So the way we're going to do this is that we're going to define 2 machines within WebLogic, machine A and machine B. And then in the hosts file for your computer, we're going to define 2 host names. But those 2 host names, they will be different, but they will have the same IP address. So essentially, the 2 host names are going to point to your machine, to a single machine. And that's how we're going to trick WebLogic into thinking that there are 2 machines. So we're not going to have to reinstall WebLogic. If we were actually deploying this to a remote machine, we would have to install WebLogic again on that remote machine. We're not going to have to do that here, although we could, but it's unnecessary. I think installing WebLogic has been covered in depth in the first lab. So in order to prepare our environment for this remote deployment, let's go ahead and create those host names I was talking about. So go ahead and open up a terminal window. So what we're going to do now is we're going to modify your OS's host file, and we're going to add host name entries that will point back to your machine. And those host names will be used later on in the lab to define 2 distinct machines. So if you're in Windows, you need to edit the hosts file, and that hosts file can be found, the location to that hosts file is listed in the lab guide. And I believe it's cwindows/system32/drivers/etc/hosts. On almost all Linux systems, including OS X, it's under etc. Okay, so let's go ahead and edit the etc host file. And this is my etc host file. So I've got some static IPs defined in here for some systems that are in my environment. So what we want to do now is define entries for demo A and demo B. So if you look at the lab guide, it defines 2 host names that we're going to specify, demo A and demo B. And the syntax here, make sure you sudo the file. Otherwise, make sure you edit the file with edit elevated privileges. Otherwise, you won't be able to save it. Okay. So go ahead and add an entry for demo A. So the syntax here is the IP address for demo A, which is going to be your computer or wherever the admin server is running. So I'm going to call this demo A. And do the same for demo B and use the same IP address. Go ahead and save this file and exit. So now I should be able to ping demo A. Great. I should be able to ping demo B. And they point to the same machine, which is my computer. So when we use these as listen addresses within WebLogic, WebLogic's not going to know the difference. So the next step is to create a new directory structure for holding demo B's domain files. So we've got this directory structure under U01 Udemy, where we have the product, an applications directory, a domains directory, a file store. So these things are specific to this server, right? All these directories support WebLogic running on this server, which we're going to call Demo A. Well, if we're simulating a second server called Demo B, I want to create a similar directory structure. I don't want to share this directory structure. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new lab home for Demo B. Let's go ahead and make a directory under lab home called Demo B. When we unpack the managed server template, we are going to define the domain home to be under this Demo B directory. This will all make sense when we walk through it. So now that we've defined the host names for Demo A and Demo B, we need to update the listen addresses for all of our WebLogic servers and Node Manager. Let's start with the domain. And we're going to use our sample WebLogic domain for this. So let's go under domain, and then WL server and config. Config.x, okay. And then VI, the config.xml file. Okay, so now search for all occurrences of listen address. Listen-address. Okay, so the first occurrence here, if you're a Notepad or whatever text editor, you can just do a find. I'm in VI, so I just enter a slash and then the search string. And the first occurrence is for the admin server. And you can see that here, I've got a server definition. And then here's the name of my server. So we have our admin server definition. And then if you look a little further down, there's the listen address defined. And we're using the IP address right now. So go ahead and swap this out for the Demo A host name that we defined in Etsy host. Okay. And you can leave the listen or the admin port the same. We're not going to touch ports. We're just going to touch listen addresses. So go ahead and search for the next occurrence of listen address. Okay. And you can see here, this is for MS1. So go ahead and change, and here's MS1. Go ahead and change the listen address from the IP to Demo A. Then search for listen address again. Now this one's for MS2. So let's go ahead and change this one to Demo A. Come on. Now let's search again. Okay, so this is where we're going to deviate a little bit. Here's the definition for Managed Server 3. Okay. Managed Server 3 is not going to be on Demo A. We want to put Managed Server 3 on Demo B. So Managed Server 3 is going to be running on our second server called Demo B. So go ahead and change the listen address here to use Demo B. So now we've taken our admin server and our managed server 1 and 2, and we've updated their listen address so that they're going to be listening for requests on Demo A. And our managed server B and our managed server 3 will be listening for requests on Demo B, which, as you know, Demo A and Demo B point to the same IP address, but WebLogic doesn't know that. Okay, so go ahead and save this file. Now we need to update Node Manager. So to do that, let's go back up and under domain home, go into the Node Manager directory and edit the nodemanager.properties file. Then under listen address, go ahead and change this to Demo A. And so when we use the managed server template to create a domain for Demo B that's going to contain the managed server 3, we're also going to have a separate instance of Node Manager there as well. So we're going to have admin server, MS1, MS2, and Node Manager running on Demo A, and then we'll have another instance of Node Manager and MS3 running on Demo B. So go ahead and save this. Now let's go ahead and create a managed server template. So now that we have our domain configured, we can execute the pack command to create that template. So let's go ahead and change directory to where the pack command is located. And that's going to be under Oracle Home, Oracle Common, Common, Bin. This is by the way, this is a good directory to put in your path so that you don't have to keep changing directory to here. There's a lot of tools in here that are very helpful if you're working with WebLogic on a day-to-day basis. So it's very handy to do that. I haven't done that. I'm lazy. But the pack and the pack and unpack commands are in this directory. And the syntax for pack, it's just a shell script here, is you pass it the domain home, which is going to be dash domain is the flag, equals the fully qualified path to the WL server domain. So we're going to do U01, Udemy, domains, and then WL server. And then dash template, which is the name, which is the location and name of the template jar file that you want to create. So we're going to put that under lab home. So U01 Udemy / WL server underscore template.jar. This syntax is in the lab guide, and really we can name this template jar file anything that you want, but this is the name that I chose. Dash, the next parameter specifies that this domain template is a managed server template. So you type dash managed equals true. By default, if you run the pack command without this flag, it will create a domain template. And a domain template includes everything in the domain packaged as a jar file, whereas a managed server template is only going to contain the things to support creating a managed server on a remote machine. And then we have to specify a name for the template. I'm not sure why this is a required parameter, but this is purely a cosmetic parameter. So you could specify anything here, and you specify it in double quotes. So template name equals WL server managed template. Okay. And then go ahead and hit enter. And you'll see that it's reading the domain located under domain home. And then when it's done, hopefully you'll see a succeed message. And so what this tool did is it read the domain files under domain home and created a template from those domain files under lab home. And our template is that WL server template.jar file. So let's go to our lab home directory and check out that template.jar file. Okay, so do a listing in here, and you'll see that there is a WL server template.jar file in our lab home. Okay, so you can actually go ahead and list the contents of this file just for your own curiosity. We can do that using the jar command. So do a jar tvf, assuming jar is in your path, and then the name of the template, the file name, WL server template.jar, and we'll pipe it to more. It's gonna be a lot of files in here. So you can see that a template jar is not merely just a zip of a domain directory. WebLogic packages everything into the template jar using a very specific directory structure. So we have our applications under this underscore apps underscore, and then config is under another config directory. And so this does not look like any directory, any domain directory structure that you may be familiar with already. So don't think that you can simply unjar this file or unzip it and you've got a domain. You've got to run the unpack command in order to make sense of this template jar file. Okay, so quit out of here. And normally if we had created this template.jar file, we would then copy that file to our remote server. And you could do that either using an NFS share to move the file, or SCP, or if you got an SFTP server, you can move files that way. Or if you're in Windows, you can probably just, you've got servers in a work group and you can just drag and drop. But in this case, we are only simulating that second server. So what we're going to do is we're going to pretend that we're distributing the template.jar file. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy this WL server template jar file to that demo B directory that we created. And that was under lab home, which is U01 Udemy demo B. So now we can actually go ahead and unpack the template jar file now that we've copied it. So let's go under demo B. Okay, there's our template jar file. And assuming that we had installed WebLogic on the remote server, we can go ahead and now run the unpack command. And the syntax for that, make sure you reference the absolute path to the unpack command unless that bin directory is in your path already. So unpack is located in the same directory as pack, which is Oracle home, common bin unpack.sh. And the syntax here is this. So the first parameter here is to specify the location of the template, and that is the fully qualified path. I may be in the same directory as the template.jar, but we need to specify the fully qualified path to that file. So demo B, WL server template.jar. The next parameter is the location of the domain that we're going to create. Now we're not creating a new domain. We're creating a copy of the domain that's going to host our managed server. And so our new domain home on demo B is going to be dash domain equals U01 Udemy demo B. Then we're going to create a new domain root directory. So domains / WL server. So this looks just like our original domain home, on demo A. So we're pretty much mimicking the same thing that we've done on demo B to keep things consistent. And that's it. Those are the only two parameters that unpack takes. Go ahead and hit enter. So unpack reads the template.jar file, processes the files in it, and then dumps out a domain directory. Okay, so unpack verifies the domain configuration, and it found an invalid configuration for one of our servers and cluster configurations. So we'll correct that via the admin console once we start up the admin server. Let's do a listing in here and see that we do have a domains directory. So unpack created this domains directory, and in here should be our domain, our WL server domain. And then there it is. So this new domain directory looks a lot like our other domain directory. It's a little stripped down to support only a managed server. So there are some elements that are not included in a managed server domain directory structure, but we have everything here to start up a managed server. And this is how you scale out a WebLogic deployment. There may seem a lot of commands that we've typed, so you can certainly script this. You can automate this by scripting it or by using Chef. You can create a recipe to use Chef, or if you've got Puppet, you can use Puppet. Or any automation tool that you have in your environment, or whatever you have, you can certainly script this process. You can also use Oracle Enterprise Manager or Fusion Middleware Cloud Control to perform this scaling out. Those two tools are out of scope for this lab, for this course actually.